Hello here, and welcome again to another edition of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washed. We are in it, boys. The dog days of fall camp. Guys are getting sore. It's the time of fall camp where everybody freaks out because players aren't practicing. And Sipple, we talked about this off air. We've been covered a lot of fall camps, and usually by about the midpoint of week 2-ish around now, guys are sore, hamstrings, sprains, just minor stuff, but it kind of leads to a little bit of a freak out, like, oh no, what's going to happen? And, we're at that point. I mean, Teddy Prohaska, we know, is out with what's called a tweak. I would assume it's a knee, but we don't know that. Matt Rhule has not confirmed that. Xavier Betts not at practice. We don't know what he's out with. Malachi Coleman not at practice. Marcus Washington comes back after his cast off his hand. Then he falls down on his leg funny. He's on crutches. So you've got a lot of those going on. And by the way, Arik Gilbert not practicing, no update on his waiver. So I think that's kind of where we're at right now, is can they get through this back part of camp and get this football team ready to play on August 31st?
Yeah. The receiver position is something to look at. I mean, you hope that when we go over Saturday and Matt Rhule addresses us again, right, that he says, yeah, Coleman, Malachi Coleman, and Xavier Betts are back, and that Washington's full go, ready to go. That's what you hope. And you don't want that receiver position. You don't want those injuries at the receiver position to drag on. Let's just face it, Washington and Betts are two of your top four.
Correct.
Almost in any scenario. Coleman, not as much. Probably has a little ways to go based on what I'm hearing. Now, one thing I would say, Sean, I still consider this kind of early in camp. I don't know that the dog days are about the 12th to the 15th.
Well, they'll move out of the dorms on Saturday, so they're on the back stretch of the dorm life.
Oh, that's a good point. And I'll tell you something. That's when that move really looks good, Rob and Sean. Because that'll give, in a sense, it'll energize the kids. It will. It'll give them some energy as they go into what I would say are the dog days. It'll energize them going into okay, we're going home to sleep on our own beds. We got our dogs, we got our girlfriends, all that, right? Mm-hmm. So that move will look even, I think, better next week when they're out.
I think the concerns, though, are wide receiver was already maybe the biggest question on the offense, just in terms of personnel. And now you got a bunch of guys that aren't even practicing right now, where for several practices. And so that, I think, leads to some concern, just because you got a lot of young guys that you want to see get reps that aren't out there. And then Marcus Washington was supposed to be one of your known commodities.
Absolutely.
And he's suffered 2 injuries already. So you have Billy Kemp, and then what else? So that's I think where that concern comes from. And then, you look at some other spots like, the offensive line with not just Prohaska, but Nuruddin Nouili missing some time. He had the green jersey on when we saw him on Tuesday. Doesn't seem like it's anything serious. But again, it's positions that were probably some of the bigger concerns going into camp, where guys that you were counting on aren't practicing. And so I think that's where kind of the here we go again mentality for Nebraska fans start to set in.
But you have to, you know what, Sean and Rob, the good teams have depth. You can't when a couple starters go down, as Sean says, freak out. The one thing I would add to this is Nouili's injury is big. I talked to a veteran coach who still practice observer who believes that Nouili is their best lineman. Now, you don't hear that all the time, but that was a big loss last year.
He's in the concussion jersey, though. I don't think he's out.
That's just a concussion.
Yeah,
when he wasn't in the yellow.
When you're wearing the green, you're concussion typically. Non-contact.
I think he's okay.
Yeah, no, and Lutoski had been working in his spot, who's been a starter. Like Matt Rhule made an interesting comment. He said, we just need 7. And when that whole group is healthy, they have 7. Corcoran, Ben Hart, Teddy Prohaska, Piper, Lutoski, Ben Scott, Nouili. That's the 7.
Yeah, that's a pretty good 7.
If you take out 1 or 2 of those 7, then you're getting down to a lot of unknowns.
Listen to us, though. I got to listen to myself sometimes. I said, that's a pretty good 7. It's still the biggest question mark on offense. Now, I know what you said about receiver, Rob, but I just can't say that the I'm still saying
offensive
the
line is
offensive
clearly
that's the biggest
on the
question.
team.
Yeah.
On the entire team.
Yeah. Now I guess the best way to put it, Sean, is those 7 give you the best chance to be good. We'll see what it looks like. I would think they're going to be all right.
And how about back to the camp layout, just the mental kind of moves by Matt Rhule, like practicing at night on Wednesday, then afternoon Thursday,
Smart.
just to create mental breaks, physical breaks,
recovery.
And then they took him to the soccer game. We were talking about this off air. I just can't imagine like any other coach like saying, "All right, boys, load up the bus. We're going to the soccer." I mean,
Riley,
right? They didn't do it though.
They didn't do it, but I would say Riley would do that.
This has been as different of a camp as I can remember between the 2 practices to start it off, living in the dorms, the TV show, the water balloon fights, the pranks.
Yeah.
I mean, going to the soccer game. I mean, it's totally a different version of Nebraska than we've seen. And that's what you would expect when you make a change like this. And Matt Rhule kind of wiped the slate clean. I mean, he's brought in completely new people, obviously all the way around him. I
think one of the reasons they can do stuff like that, like get away from football, is because how much they maximize their practice time.
Oh yeah.
Like we're there for 20, 30 minutes, but you just see how efficiently everything is. Like there's a 0 wasted second from when we were there. I remember I put this in the weekly RSS chat this week, where I was standing kind of in between the indoor fields and the outdoor fields, and the period ended, and there's the walkie-talkies going on with all the GAs and equipment managers and all that stuff. And one of the kids was like, 9:06. And I looked at my clock, it was 9:06 on the dot. So that means they're charting every minute of practice and making sure they know when a period starts and when it ends. And so there's no waiting around.
No, and
they have an intercom where they announce over huge speakers. It's like where they yell out what the drill is. It's not coaches yelling. There's literally a speaker, so everyone hears it. Like there's no wasted time.
The old hats, the former coaches from the 90s are giddy right now, because finally there's a coach in here that is the players are not standing around.
Mm-hmm.
How many, I can't tell you how many times I had one of the old coaching staff or a former player over the years say to me, God, there's so many guys standing around over there. I mean, you'd go back to the Bo era for sure. Sean, I think you'd go back to the Callahan era, and guys would, Frost era for sure, where guys would say, except there's just old coaches, former players would say, Sip, there's just too many guys standing around. They don't listen to Osborne. For some reason, Scott didn't listen to Osborne. I have no idea why.
Because there's a lot of work.
Rhule,
it takes a lot of work to manage that many guys.
Right. Rhule listened. And there's very few guys standing around at practice now. We have to make that very clear, because I've criticized coaches for it. Can't criticize Rhule. He's got guys working, all the guys working.
I mean, just to think about all your players too, it just takes a lot of thought. I mean, just think about it on our day-to-day basis. If I told you need to manage an additional 15 or 20 riders that aren't at your level, Steve Sipple, but I need you to
find that, by the way.
Which you're not going to find that, but you need to go out and take care of and manage and make sure that these guys are getting the proper training and reps.
Oh,
it's
a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
But here's the thing, though, as you guys know, there's a ton of staff over there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, back in the 90s, guys, they had 2 GAs. That was the extra staff. Okay. Now you go over there. There are guys I still have no earthly idea who they are. I have no earthly idea.
The updated budget just came out for like the upcoming year on the UNL records, and the amount of people that aren't coaches that make between 50 and 150,000. I mean, it's just like it's like this 20-inch list of names. I was like, whoa! I mean, it's crazy.
That's but that's
Big Ten.
I don't want to branch off, but I guarantee you won't find that list at Toledo. You won't find that list at San Jose State,
Stanford.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe not. I don't know, but that's where the inequity. There's some inequity there. But anyway, yeah. They do have a ton of staff to help. It helps.
All right, when we come back, we're going to delve into more specific offensive storylines here in week 2 during fall camp. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, working our way through the start of fall camp. But before I get to that, this show and segment is sponsored by BetterHelp. Sometimes in life, we're faced with tough choices, and the path forward isn't always clear. It's busy for all of us right now. You got kids going back to school, activities going on. The list goes on. And whether you're just dealing with decisions around your career, relationships, or anything else, therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want to navigate through your life so you can move forward with confidence and excitement. Trusting yourself to make decisions that align with your values is like anything. The more you practice it, the easier it gets. Right now, I'm trying to get through my book right now. I got a lot on my mind. I got soccer practice, things going on. So you can always use somebody that you want to talk to. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists for any time for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Husker to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/Husker. Again, this episode and segment of the Husker Online Show brought to you by BetterHelp. Gentlemen, let's talk offensive storylines. Let's talk quarterbacks for Nebraska. You look at where fall camp's at right now. We obviously know Jeff Sims is there, but you got the feel this week from Matt Rhule that maybe Chubba Purdy has kind of asserted himself in that number 2 job.
Well, I mean, he says he's made huge strides. He says he's not as antsy. His feet are calmer. I mean, the fact he's made giant strides is big. I would say this about Chubba last season. I think you guys would agree. I didn't think he looked comfortable.
No.
I just didn't think he looked comfortable. Now, if the game's slowing down for him, and he isn't as antsy. Now that's Rhule's word. Rhule used the word antsy. If that's true, that helps. It's a huge part of this overall how's Nebraska going to be discussion. If they have a quality backup, that soothes a lot of nerves.
Right, and we've talked a lot about it. Just the fact that the backup quarterback has been almost as critical as anyone on the team over the last few years, given how much Nebraska's had to rely on them. So having someone that not only they can play in there, but they're confident in, I think that's a lot to be said for that. So, with Chubba, he's still a young quarterback. That's what you got to keep in mind when evaluating him. Last year, he got thrown in the fire, and Casey Thompson was the guy, and all of a sudden he goes out. And so they threw Chubba into the wolves a little bit, and he wasn't ready. And so he's got another offseason under his belt. He's got an offense that might be a little bit more complementary to the quarterback and run a system that's going to protect him a little bit. And with things slowing down, maybe this is the time where he makes that jump to the player that he was projected to be coming out of high school.
Sean, when Robin says, and I think I know where you're going, run a system that's a little more quarterback friendly, protects the quarterback, what are we talking about?
I think proper balance.
Run the ball.
Disguise. I mean, I think with Whipple, it became very predictable what was going to happen, how they were going to run, when they were going to run, especially when Frost got fired. They eliminated a lot of those zone read concepts that maybe gave you a little bit more. And you could always tell Frost wanted to do those things with Casey Thompson, even though that really wasn't a strong suit, but he needed it to kind of give the offense the balance. And then once Frost was gone, Whipple threw all that out the window. And they kind of went to more what he wanted to do. And it produced some home runs with Trey Palmer, but it didn't have the right balance to win in this league.
Running the ball. So legit play action, for instance, like legit play action.
Like situational execution of football. Like when you're second and 2,
exactly.
Can you run and get 2 yards? You're not trying to get a home run to Trey Palmer for 70. Can you line up and get 2 yards when they know you're going to do it and we know we're going to do it? But can your men beat their men and out execute them to get 2 yards?
And facing 2nd and 6 as opposed to 2nd and 11.
I'll tell you what, though. It's way easier said than done.
Of course.
No, I know. And Nebraska had that at the beginning of the Big Ten. I mean, They had some great running backs. If you think about when they started this conference, they had Rex Burkhead, Amir Abdullah. They had some really, really good. Roy Halou was not in the Big Ten, but they had Roy Halou in 2010. And you had guys like Tommy and Taylor Martinez.
Who was up front?
Well, Searles, Qualley.
Yeah.
Andrew Rodriguez. Right
Spencer
now,
Long.
Andrew Rodriguez, when he was engaged and playing ball, way better
All-American.
way better player than what they have right now.
Ooh.
Yes, absolutely.
He
was all Big Ten.
Andrew, what's Rodriguez?
He was 1 year. He received all conference honors.
Okay.
Ooh, what are you gonna tell me? The guys that they have out on the field have been better at that level?
No, I'm interested that you picked.
I'm just throwing out names like DJ Jones. You think about some of the guys that locally that have played, they just haven't been able to develop and produce.
Right.
You'd Brett Qualley would be like Dave Remington right now.
Qualley was good.
I know, but
Qualley had a hard time getting in the starting lineup though.
Mhm.
But once he did, it was like, what was the wait for this?
he played a long time in the NFL.
He did.
Mhm.
He beat out that Tyler Moore.
Yeah.
And then Tyler Moore transferred. Remember that?
Yep.
Yeah. I think Qualley had a class conflict, and I honestly think that held him back a little bit.
He was still a 2+ year starter.
Okay. God, Rodriguez was all Big Ten, and I totally
Okay, now
I hope to
Fact
God
check.
he was for your sake, Sean.
But I think the
Anyway.
point is that they had the offensive lines.
They
We just
were
listed
better.
a handful of guys that you would start right now.
Yeah, I would. There's no doubt in my mind they were better up front back then, but they weren't. If you remember, Amir made a lot on his own.
he was honorable mention.
Did you just call him
It's a little
Amir?
different than first team All Big Ten. I would have remembered that.
He wasn't first team.
Right.
Second, third.
Yeah.
They don't have guys getting second or third team right now.
No.
First team, you're all American. You're getting drafted, and you're like day 2 of the draft.
Yeah.
They haven't.
No, I got you. They got to get better up front.
If you're a first team all Big Ten O lineman, D lineman,
God, I got to think Teddy's can be as good as Rodriguez.
The thing is, with the Big Ten offensive lines, if you're honorable mention, you're pretty good. So I would take that.
This is a sideline, but this waylaid me last night for about 2 hours. I was talking to one of Prohaska's friends. He's a grown man, but he's a friend of the family, and he said, "Sipple, I think he's almost 7 foot."
they list him at 6'11" now, right? Or 6'10".
7 foot. That threw me for a big loop.
Yeah.
You don't see much. You don't. Have you ever seen on a football roster, 7 foot?
Never.
I don't think
the
I've
thing
ever
about
seen it.
Teddy is when he was 250, 260, he went to the rivals camps back then, and he moved at an elite level.
I think listen to him 6'11" now.
6'10" for sure.
Yeah, 6'10".
He moved at an elite level.
Oh yeah, he
And
looks good.
As he's added weight though, and then gone through different injuries, obviously it's harder to move at that size, and it's been. That's a lot of weight. You think about where he's probably added 70, 80 pounds to his body.
Yeah.
Yeah,
6'10", 325 is what they
6'10",
list him at
okay.
right now.
So I wonder. I hope. I almost hope it's not true that he's trending towards 7
Yeah,
foot.
if he's not done growing, come on,
7
man.
foot left tackle Teddy Prohaska.
Fred needs to make some phone calls.
Well, and playing for Nebraska means so much to Teddy. You hope that guy.
It does.
He is a great ambassador for the school and the program, and you just hope he can get it going.
his
Because
brother would like to play here.
his brother's going to Northwest Missouri State, committed there
Yeah, he would have liked to play here. I'll tell you that.
as a walk-on, even.
Yeah.
So yeah, Teddy Prohaska, Nuri Newelly, waiting on those situations. We come back, we're going to switch the conversation to defensive fall camp storylines. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show, and we're back here on the Husker Online Show with Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, as working our way through fall camp. Let's shift the conversation, gentlemen, over to defensive storylines, and I want to start on the back end of the defense because I think a lot has moved, at least from where we thought things were back in July. Miles Farmer gone. Don't really know. You kind of Marquise Buford not practicing. Those were 2 at least perceived starters by just the rank and file average Nebraska fan. They're gone. But I think when you look at it now, 2 things have kind of emerged in camp. Isaac Gifford is a dude. They like Isaac Gifford. He's having a great camp. And then Tommy Hill, I think he's kind of the comeback story of the team. you think about where he was. I mean, this is a guy that, it was almost like he was run off and they moved him to receiver.
Yeah.
Just kind of as a gimmick.
Exactly.
I mean, Travis Fisher and him, whatever happened there, it didn't end well. And he moved over to receiver with Mickey. And then now he's back.
He's back. And it's interesting though. Our message board guys are smart. And somebody asked the question, so where is Hill playing? I can't say that I know.
Corner.
Is he definitely corner?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what Malcolm Hartzog said
Okay.
earlier this week.
So thank you, Rob.
First guy mentioned.
So
opposite Newsome,
Hartzog.
And Hartzog's playing primarily safety right now. He's still going both ways, but as of earlier this week, he said Malcolm Hartzog said he was working more at safety.
Isn't it funny though? Like every guy goes out of their way to not tell you how and where they're playing on that back end. It's everybody plays all positions.
Cross train.
Like Malcolm, and that's obviously probably true. But you can't really get, other than Quentin Newsome's a corner. I think beyond that, it's, and Isaac Gifford's a safety.
Are you telling me that Hill could be a starting corner?
It would not surprise
That's
me.
what he was last year.
For 4 games,
He was a game one starter and obviously played his way out of that role. But you just pair all the praise that's going out to Tommy Hill right now. Like coaches, teammates alike are calling him not just a good player, but like one of the leaders of the team. And like one of the bigger voices of the secondary.
Yeah, Rhule, Rhule, interestingly, went through what he called the guys who regulate the temperature.
Mm-hmm. And he named Tommy Hill
in the locker room, and there's only five guys, and Tommy Hill was one of them.
So we were asked in the chat, like, what's the big surprise on defense? It's Tommy Hill.
Yeah,
like I wrote him off. I thought he'd never play it down here again, and now all of a sudden we're talking about him as a potential starting cornerback.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people did write him off. I don't know that I completely write him off, but yeah, he's a surprise. I mean, remember against Georgia Southern last year? I thought that was the tipping point.
It was not good
because they were just going at Tommy.
Like I said, he played his way out of that starting job.
Well, and then whatever happened behind the curtain with him and Travis Fisher and the previous staff, he went. I mean, I don't know if he got emotional and upset. Something happened last year where then all of a sudden he was no longer a DB.
You remember we were in Rutgers. We were at Rutgers for that trip, which incredible.
The trip of the Nissan Titan,
and there he was
truck.
warming up. He was warming up with the receivers.
Yeah,
it was like, wow. Yeah, he got not only lost his job, he's working with another group.
Remember, Trev was playing catch on the sidelines pregame, like running routes. That was a fun. And then you have
what I remember most.
Well, the Barstool Sports guys were doing their show. It was an interesting trip, and the truck ran all day.
Yeah, the truck is what I'll remember most. But anyway, as far as Gifford goes, I can't. Come on, guys, did we see this coming? That Gifford,
not to this level,
in after practice 7, Rhule would be talking about Isaac Gifford like that. That he
the alpha.
That he controls the secondary.
Yes,
that he's taken charge of that group. Would we have said that?
No.
I always knew he was a good athlete, though, and I just felt like in the previous staff, like he was a tweener, meaning they didn't know if he was a linebacker, they didn't know if he was a safety.
Right.
But I always can remember talking to his father, Sam, about basketball and how Isaac could literally like block shots on the top of the backboard. I mean, he was just a freak athlete. Like with all these great basketball players, he could run and you knew the athletic ability was there. I just think nobody wanted to commit to what he was. And Frost's staff offered him kind of a half-ass gray shirt.
Yeah. Gray shirt.
But then they screwed it up. Like what they did wasn't even legal. So like they had to put him on scholarship. Like
breaking news.
Well, no, like I think they tried to kind of like skirt around it where he wasn't going to count towards a number, but then the way he ended up coming in, he was going to count. So then they just put him on, and they had one that opened. But initially he kind of came in as a walk-on for at least a semester.
Well, and this is big. I mean, they found one of their main safeties, the guy who, again, Rhule says he controls the secondary. He's a dude. He's all in. The family loves the program. They would be here no matter who the coach was, probably.
Great family.
Yeah, great family. And you use the word that's the best way to describe. He's just a dude. He's just a tough tough, rugged football player, and he'll anchor the secondary.
You know what I loved when talking about all the gains that he's made defensively. Somebody asked him, what kind of roles he was going to take on special teams, and he kind of smirked. He was like, "I'm always going to play special teams.
Yep.
I'm going to play on as many as I can."
Yep.
Like that, to me, is why he's in this position and why the staff loves him so much, because he's the ultimate team guy by example, through his leadership and his voice, and then with his high level play on the field.
I had somebody in our post-practice comments say, "Doesn't he remind you of Casey from Yellowstone?"
Yeah, God, he does.
He does.
Now that you mention it, yeah,
startling.
Yeah,
see if Megan can do a side by side of that.
Yeah,
yeah. John Dutton's younger son that was like in the military.
Yeah,
and he's also a badass, by the way.
Yeah, he does definitely remind me of him. Interesting. And he drives a pickup.
Yep,
tough kid.
I saw Gifford driving a pickup over by Mott's Lawn 2 this summer.
Oh, there he is.
Look at it. I mean,
pretty Isaac, what are you doing?
Isaac,
moonlighting
the range.
Yeah.
I think he's got a young child.
It's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah, like that could be your Halloween costume, Isaac.
Yeah,
if you're looking for a good one, just
God, Megan, that's perfect.
Yes.
I wish. Yeah, that's
Megan's on point.
Yeah,
behind the curtain.
It's
interesting too. You look at Reimer and Gifford could be two of the better guys on this defense. Both came as walk-ons in Nebraska, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, right. Well,
Reimer was a walk-on.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. Reimer was a walk-on that quickly was given a scholarship.
Okay.
And same with
right.
Isaac.
Yeah, Reimer made like an impression immediately on the staff. Like it was, remember Barrett? Like right away, like, yeah, Reimer's going to be a player.
Well, 2019 out at Maryland, like it was almost freaky how good he looked when he came in the game late. I mean, it's like, wait a minute, this guy looks better. Then the first game of the pandemic, 2020 out at Northwestern,
he was a bullet.
He was a stud.
He was so quick. I mean, he was so much quicker to the ball than just about anybody. Yeah. So, now he's going to be one of the top 3 tacklers all time in program history. But yeah, those two guys are critical. Two Lincoln. Yeah, I mean, I'd say 2 Lincoln kids. I know Reimer was a Kansas guy for a while, but that's 2 Lincoln public school,
2
LPS products.
Yep.
Robin.
That's right. Hey,
like Rob.
We're doing something right now.
Yeah.
All right. When we come back, we're going to take questions in the mailbag next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. We'll bring in Abby Barmore to start the mailbag. But before we get to that, Steve Sipple, the mailbag brought to you by
Larson Motors. You could drive to Nebraska City and listen to our podcast while you're doing this. If you're looking for a new vehicle, go for a new experience, perhaps at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors is one of the Midwest's only dealerships with all the major brands in one spot. Finding your Chevrolet, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram has never been easier. So maybe start your experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com or at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Right down the highway from Lincoln. Larson Motors, real people, real deals.
All right, time for the mailbag, Abby. Where are we starting off?
Okay, what are your thoughts on how the conference realignment will affect bowl games?
Geez, Sean. Commissioner Callahan.
That's right.
So the big questions are the Alamo Bowl, and I thought about you on this one, the Sun Bowl, El Paso. Steve Sipple fantasizes over trips to places.
I was devastated when Alex Henry made that 57-yard. If they weren't going, if he misses that kick, they're going to El Paso.
Can you imagine the level of El Toro Mexican restaurants?
I can imagine
in El Paso,
the
Texas.
mezcalitas would be flowing.
They would.
Well, I okay. I don't know how deep I want to get in the story, but I heard stories back in the day, like when you would get your media credential at the Sun Bowl, they would give you like shots of tequila at check-in.
Oh, Rob wouldn't have liked that at all.
No, I would walk away.
And now this is back in like the early 80s, but somebody said that there were even like professionals working the lobby.
Well,
like,
I don't know.
I'm not going to get into that stuff. I was like, God, that's quite the bullshit.
Why you think that would appeal to me, I don't know. But Anyway,
Welcome to the Sun Bowl, Mr. Simple.
this will be our last episode. So,
That's right.
let's let it fly now.
Yeah, let's go. Why not?
But yeah, the Sun Bowl and then the Alamo Bowl.
Why are those on your mind?
Well, because the Pac-12 is done, and the Pac-12 was a primary partner to the Alamo Bowl. I do think the SEC is going to be in a good position for those Texas bowl games because of Arkansas, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma. Those bowl games are going to know they'll get one of those teams.
Okay.
I still think the Big 10 will get some of those games, but I have a hard time thinking. I mean, the Alamo Bowl is going to want the SEC if they can.
Well, or could the Big 12 absorb one of those? The Sun Bowl?
The Big 12 or the ACC is in the Sun Bowl, so the Big 12 could go to the Sun Bowl.
Okay, that's right.
The Sun Bowl still is aired on CBS. It's the only like bowl game CBS airs. They have the longest. It's got a lot of tradition, that bowl game.
I'm just glad somebody wondered about the bowls because it's like, oh yeah, they still play bowl games.
Oh, and the Holiday Bowl too.
Yeah,
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if the Holiday Bowl is back to the Big 10. And
really,
we lost that one, and Robert and I had some good times at the Holiday Bowl.
Spent a lot of time in San Diego.
Missed the shuttle one year. They told them there was a media shuttle to come back, and this was pre-Uber days. And Robert and I were sitting outside the stadium with
Qualcomm.
There was a domestic dispute going on about a block away, and the cops came. We're just sitting there watching, waiting, and no one came. So finally, the director of the bowl game picked Robin and I up and gave us a ride back.
He left their like bowl staff party.
Wasn't the
to come
mayor
pick us
available?
up in his own car?
No, but it was Mark Neville.
Mark Neville.
Is that right?
He
What a
picked
dude.
us up at like 2 a.m.
What a
from
dude.
Qualcomm Stadium.
That is, say the fella's name again.
Mark Neville.
Yeah, he
Great
deserves
man.
that. He deserves to have his name mentioned twice,
All
3
right.
times.
What's
Mark
next,
Neville.
Abby Barmore?
Okay, our next one. Who do you think will earn the single-digit jerseys?
Gifford's a pretty good bet.
So
Sims.
If he
yeah,
wants it.
Kemp, Newsom,
Sherman. That's 5. Is there going to be like a wild card? Is there going to be like a John Bullock guy that gets one of these?
Alex Bullock.
What about like a Tommy Hill?
Tommy Hill.
He's a 0. That was his number last year.
So here's my question. So for one, do we know what they're going to do with offensive linemen? I mean, like, do they just get like a little helmet sticker,
Yeah.
single digit? Because by the rule, they can't be
can't
single
wear
digits,
that.
obviously.
Like, what about if Nash Hutmacher's won?
Yeah.
Be kind of cool.
Yeah.
But would he take a single digit?
Well, that's another thing. Would like I said Gifford flippantly, but Isaac, would he take one?
That's what like, and so like
kinda have
Jeff
to.
Sims has been like 14 for a long time.
He won't be 14 because Ramir's 14,
What is he?
isn't he?
I don't know.
Isn't Ramir Johnson 14?
I think they changed his number.
They can't. They got like 4 14s
Yeah,
right
okay.
now. I know.
yeah,
that.
well, because of the no single digits, they've got a few.
Right. So yeah, so anyway, that was just an example. Their guys are pretty superstitious and like traditional about their numbers.
True.
Like they have the same number from like Pop Warner all the way
Like
through their
Newsom
entire
wants that
careers.
6-pack.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so like, are there guys that are going to want to change their numbers to be a single digit guy, or they want to keep things going? So I wonder about that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think the discussion is fascinating because there are people like me who I don't care what number I would have been. I just
You
give me
know-
a number. I don't care what it is.
Like
Now, but there are guys who it is very important to them.
Yeah. If you're a defensive back, you don't want to be like 47 or something like
No,
that.
I don't.
That's
wouldn't
John
bother
Lynch, though.
me.
That's a good number.
do you think Rhule, though, is prepared for the amount of over analyzing that's going to come out of this? I'm guessing at Baylor and
He's not.
Temple when he did this,
he's not?
like it didn't even like it didn't. It was just like an update on the official website, and maybe somebody goes, "Oh, these are the new numbers." Here, I mean, there's going to be like special sections in the newspaper on it.
Well, why is this guy got a single and not this guy?
Yeah, I mean, it's
right.
going to be nut. I mean, like, I don't know if Rhule quite understands like the over analyzing that's going to come with this.
He will
I
very
think
quickly.
he's starting to get a pretty
yeah,
good idea.
he's learning very quickly about it.
Yeah, the fan day thing kind of upset him. You could tell. I mean, he didn't like lose his cool around
What's that?
where people identified the people that weren't at
Doing
fan
roster
day.
reports based off fan day attendance.
I wasn't there, by the way. All right, what's next? We got time for 2 more.
Oh,
Okay. Do the Huskers currently have a top 50 Big Ten player on their roster? And if so, who is it?
top 50,
Wait a second, 50?
like overall.
God,
I would
think
hope
so.
so.
Yeah.
Well, I don't
Luke
know.
Reimer would be a top 50.
So you got what? 22 guys plus specialists. So let's say like 26
Let's take specialists
on all
out.
the all Big Ten teams. They didn't have a single all Big Ten player. So no.
True.
If you base off that, no.
Well, what about second team?
Yeah, top 50 would delve into the second. Even.
Candidates. Sims has got to be one. I would think
Kemp.
That Kemp would be, and based on what we're hearing about Gifford, he's got to be entering that realm. I mean, listen, just put it this way. Rhule said he's a multi-year NFL player.
Here's the other part of the discussion.
If he keeps developing, multi-year.
Sean, you said this in the chat. Winning plays a huge part of that too.
Yeah, it does.
Does a 6 or 7 win team get more than 1 or 2 all Big Ten players on any team? I don't know.
No.
But
very rarely. You have to be pretty darn good.
Top 50 players now. Think about, are we missing somebody? Are we missing anybody obvious?
Like Newsome.
Newsome, you mentioned.
Ben Scott.
Oh, yeah.
Ben Scott.
Maybe.
I mean, he's got a draft grade.
Yeah.
But think about just the linemen in the Big Ten right now. Who's he beating out? Michigan's like entire starting 5 on the offensive line is all Big Ten.
Well, he's a pro, though. I mean, he's a pro. But a lot of it, again, will come down to winning. If you're on a 5-7 team,
that's as to whether you'll be all Big Ten. This is just the beauty of this question is it doesn't
matter.
It's just do you have a top 50 guy?
Right.
I think you might have a couple.
All right, final question.
Okay. Our last one. What is your favorite sporting event that you've ever attended?
Oh gosh,
that's a big one.
Yeah, like covered or attended?
Attended or both. You were there.
Mine. I mean, this is kind of a random one, but I went to a Manny Pacquiao, Sean Mosley fight.
That's right, you did.
And
in Vegas
with Eric Winter, a former Rivals director, and he had a relationship with the top rank Bob Arum, or the guy that ran.
Bob Arum.
So,
Bob Arum was the promoter.
And I got in late, but they went to the weigh-in on Friday, and they met Bob Arum at dinner and talked to him and stuff. But just going to that fight, seeing a true big Vegas fight was unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. The amount of celebrities and people just roam. Like, I was in the concession stand, and Tony Gonzalez was next to me buying something in line. I mean, the NFL tight end. In all these people from the Philippines came out to watch Pacquiao. He was like the Husker football team for the Philippines. Like, everybody travels to watch this guy, and that was so cool. I mean, I went to the rugby game in Aviva Stadium last year too. But that Pacquiao fight for me was very unique and fun.
You went to the rugby game?
Yeah, with Casey Frinton. We went out there.
When he was the Nebraska diplomat to Ireland.
I sat mid pitch.
He was the Nebraska diplomat. I don't know how all this escapes me.
He went over there before Frost.
Well, Frost never went on the trip.
He went in place of Frost.
Oh, this is your pre-trip.
Yeah, the marketing trip.
Oh, the marketing. This is I was gonna say.
Now,
Sean went to a rugby game when we were there.
Fitzgerald got to go over there too.
Yeah, as on your ambassador trip.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was the Nebraska rep.
Well, I'm not surprised. Rob, what's your favorite?
So
hard.
I mean, just from like a fan standpoint, probably like any of the Giants games I went to. The first Giants game I went to was in Texas. They won. It was awesome. Then I went to a Giants home game several years ago when Nebraska played at Rutgers the first time. So that was cool. But like just from an experience standpoint, I still have to say No Sit Sunday. I mean, just the atmosphere of that game was unlike anything I've ever experienced.
It was intoxicating.
It was.
It was intoxicating.
There's really been nothing that has matched that from start to finish.
It's a good one. I just hesitate so much because I covered all those national championship games, big conference championship games. If I pick something outside the realm, you guys would just think I'm crazy. I mean, I used to love going to Twins games back when they had Rod Carew. I mean, this is not in the 70s.
You were at the 94 Miami Orange Bowl, right?
No. I started in 95 full time.
Okay, that would have been up there for me if I would have been at that game.
Yeah, if you would have
just to like go in there and see Nebraska with a bunch of their offensive line had like 2 8-man guys on it, and they beat Ray Lewis and Warren Sapp.
If I'm just thinking of cool sporting memories, though, I guess one thing that comes to mind is when I go to these Minnesota Twins games, There weren't many people in their old stadium where it's on the side of the Mall of America now. So you could go down close, and I would watch Rod Carews at bats from like the first row behind home plate. And that freaked me out. I mean, I was like, man, like, look that's Rod Carew, like right in front of me. That used to, for some reason that sticks out. I did see Bob Gibson. Now I was like 5 pitch for St. Louis, but I remember it. I mean, it was Bob Gibson pitching for the Cardinals, throwing, 99 miles an hour. But I can barely remember it. Barely.
Yeah, this is one of those mailbag questions. We come back, we're going to do a whole show on this next. All right, well, that wraps it up for the mailbag. When we come back, Abby's going to stay in the discussion. Rob as well. We're going to talk some volleyball and basketball headlines to close the show. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Final segment here of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut, Abby Barmore. We're going to close up here. A lot still going on with basketball and volleyball practice in full swing as the Huskers get ready for Volleyball Day in Nebraska. Let's start with you, Abby. You've been around the volleyball team, the media day. You were in Chicago for Big Ten volleyball media days as well last week. You got to watch 3 hours of practice?
Yeah, 3 hours of practice yesterday.
Wow. And so
Tuesday.
You've got a lot on your mind. Your wheels are spinning. I mean, if somebody's our show is listening right now, what are a couple things Husker fans should know about this team?
I think the number one thing is going to be their setter battle. Bergen Riley, she's a freshman going up against junior Kennedy Orr. Kennedy does have some experience, but she blew out her knee in her senior year of high school and just hasn't really recovered from that. Not totally. They say that she's healthy, but she did not practice yesterday in the afternoon. My hunch, I don't know for sure, but my hunch is that they just don't want her to overuse it. 5 hours of practice is a lot. So what we're really looking at here is consistency, which Kennedy has kind of struggled with in the past, but also Bergen, she has fresh eyes. She does a great job of running in offense. She had, 3 hours of practice, just her running the offense yesterday. So I think durability is going to be in her court, but also, like, I talked to Kennedy earlier this week and she said that Bergen has a great serve. She wants to have Bergen serve. So I mean, right now, I think that Bergen has the edge on Kennedy, but I think it'll be a close battle.
What about Volleyball Day in Nebraska? I mean, we're getting closer to this monster day. I heard Trev and some other people say, like, they think the world record is attainable. Like, what can you tell us on this event and the day itself?
I mean, it's a huge one. They've been talking about it forever and ever, and it feels like all we do is talk. But at Big Ten Media Days, that was a lot of the questions, is that national media wanted to talk about that, how big it was for women's sports and just volleyball in general. But this is going to be a huge day. I think the hype is really, ramping up. And Sean, you saw some Volleyball Day in Nebraska shirts yesterday at Shields. So everyone's getting ready for it. But there's going to be a really big mental factor that this team has to go through, all of the teams that play in there, because there could be 90,000 people in Memorial Stadium. And that will be by far and away the most fans and biggest crowd that these players have seen.
It feels like all we do is talk. That's for damn sure.
Isn't that our job? And to write?
By the way, Abby, you can get even a Wayne State shirt. They sold like specific shirts for each team at Shields, like a UNK or Wayne State.
Is that right?
Yeah, so they were selling them
awesome.
all. So, if you're a fan of those teams too, that's kind of cool that Shields is carrying Wayne State and Kearney gear and some of these other places. But yeah, you'll have to get a t-shirt, Abby.
There it is.
Yeah, I'm in it. There's also one that has all 4 of the teams. So
yeah,
I think that would be
that's
fun.
The more neutral.
That's the one to get.
The Switzerland media type shirt where you have to be a little bit more like
it's
that's
still
the thing.
red though.
People
but...
don't really get that, guys. Like, we can't wear gear. Like when I go to events and do like, where's your red, Sean and Steve? I think people think like I'm supposed to roll in like a full like mascot costume.
Oh yeah, we had a publisher at the Journal Star that when Nebraska was going to go play Penn State during the big saga, and it was, they expected sort of rough. Maybe there'd be rough treatment. Our publisher came to me and said, we can limo you to the entrance if you want. And I said, "Why? I think we'll just blend in." And she goes, "Well, what do you mean? Won't you be wearing your red?"
No,
I said, "No, we won't be wearing red."
By the
we
way,
won't.
that was like the safest trip I've ever been on, I think.
It was pretty safe.
I mean, there was nothing, but Robin,
Yeah, we better get to hoops.
a lot going on basketball, new roster edition, latest on Ulyss, team back from Spain, Robin Washett, go.
Okay, we'll start with the addition. Drawn Boogie Coleman. He officially signed on Wednesday, committed earlier this week. So for the timing, for where we are on the calendar, for what was available for Nebraska realistically to get out of the transfer portal on August 6th, in my opinion, this is about as good as they possibly could have done. 6'5", 210-pound, 6-year senior. He's from Indianapolis, so he's got the Big Ten territory, who has 86 career starts under his belt, including 21 at the Power 5 level at Missouri 2 years ago. So he's second team All-MAC at Ball State last year, led his team in three-point shooting each of the past 2 seasons. He led the team in scoring and assists this past year. So a guy that kind of is one of those versatile big guards that Fred Hoiberg likes. So he'll play primarily the point. I'd probably consider him more of a combo, but in this kind of positionless quote unquote offense, he'll do a little bit of both. But again, I think it's more out of when the news dropped that Aaron Ulyss wasn't just caught up in the gambling investigation, but the fact that he was facing criminal charges, that changed the conversation very quickly. And that broke about an hour before they tipped off for their second game in Spain. So Nebraska staff went from hoping to add a guard, just as a luxury for some more depth, to needing to get a guard because they have no idea what Aaron Ulyss' situation is going to be long term. And to come away with that, doing 2 a.m. Zoom and phone calls, Madrid time, to call him back in the States and be able to land a guy of Boogie Coleman's caliber, like I said, tip of the cap, because I don't know if they could have done much better. With Aaron Ulyss, again, it's kind of just to be determined at this point. It's going to depend on what comes out of that investigation, where that charge comes from, operating a gambling account under a fake name. So there's just a lot of unknowns. But right now, doesn't look good. Not just for this season, but potentially the fact that he bet on an Iowa game, if there's anything more that comes out of Iowa football, to clarify, anything more that comes at that NCAA rules say you lose your NCAA eligibility for the rest of your career. So not, like I said, doesn't look good. And that's why getting Boogie Coleman was so important.
And then finally, real quick, what Robin, Spain trip in the books, they went undefeated, but there's really not a lot probably you can walk away.
Yeah, it's hard to, just because, they had 9 players and at least two starters weren't even with the team on the trip, in Tominaga and Rink Mass. So, you could find some highlights here. Bryce Williams had 28, 29 points against the best team they played on the trip. That Madrid All-Stars team beat Drake the day or two before, and Drake was an NCAA tournament team last year. And then they took Illinois. They were leading in the second half. Illinois had to mount a second half comeback to beat them. So that's, I think, the ideal picture of what you're getting out of Bryce Williams. CJ Wilcher had 3 straight good games. And for a guy whose career has been defined by inconsistency, that was a huge positive. And then Cale Jacobson, the fact that you got a walk-on that can give you substantial minutes, like positive minutes, in the same way that Sam Hoiberg did a year ago, that was a real plus to come out of that trip. So they went 3-0. The level of competition varied, but I think there was a lot of good vibes, I think, coming out of that trip, especially capping it with getting Boogie Coleman.
Yeah. That sounds meaningful.
Lots to keep up with on the team, not only basketball, volleyball, but football. Make plenty of coverage this weekend from fall camp. Make sure you follow, subscribe to us here on the Husker Online YouTube page, anywhere you can find podcasts. And obviously, check out our real work at HuskerOnline.com.